dedicated to each and every one of you who appreciate a great glass of wine. You know what I mean?
It's Monday. Let's raise a glass to the beginning of another week. It's time to unscrew, uncork, or saber a bottle. And let's begin exploring the wine glass. A couple of years ago, I had the honor of visiting Abruzzo for a press trip. It was an incredible week filled with amazing views and magnificent wine. I learned so much about the region and fell in love with its wines. I linked my article about the trip in the show notes. Today, I am sharing the audio from a Wine Scholar Guild webinar I attended a while back. It was relatively long and took place over 2 days, so I'm splitting it up into multi-episodes. I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. While you're listening, it would be greatly appreciated if you could take 1 minute to subscribe, rate, and review. It takes only a few seconds of your time, but means so much to the show. The next best way to support Exploring the Wine Glass is to tell your friends. If you enjoy the podcast, your wine-loving friends will too. Follow me on all the socials. And finally, don't forget to head over to the website, exploringthewineglass.com, to read the blog and sign up for the newsletter and keep up with all happenings. Sláinte!
No, never let you go.
Hey everybody, I'm Lori Budd, a UC Davis winemaking program, Spanish wine scholar, sommelier service, champagne and Côte d'Aron specialist, and a WSET Level 2 graduate. You can find Exploring the Wine Glass on all the socials, as well as your favorite podcast catchers. If you haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to swipe, subscribe, rate, and review. Stay in the know about all things wine by visiting my website, exploringthewineglass.com. I promise I'll never tell you what to drink, but I'll always share what's in my glass.
Very, very special. You are so special.
And the styles of wine being produced in this very interesting region. So Andrea has prepared a presentation for today's webinar, and she'll be back then again next week as well for part 2. So we hope that you can join us again.
Okay, thank you so much, Preston.
Sure.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Okay, so the presentation has been prepared by the Consorzio for the Wines of Abruzzo. And I've done a little kind of making it my own a little bit. And a little bit before we launch into Abruzzo, why did Abruzzo reach out to us to give this presentation? Well, I think that they understand that Italian Wine Scholar program is definitely the industry's most respected certification course on the wines of Italy, and look to us to be a leader in educating people about the various regions. So thank you for reaching out to us, Abruzzo. And if you do find yourself really enjoying this kind of in-depth look into the wines of Abruzzo, the territory of Abruzzo, and you want to know more about the wines of all the regions of Italy, then make sure you check out our website. And I would love to see some of you in an upcoming Italian Wine Scholar class. So for today, we're just going to kind of give you a little bit of agenda about what we're going to look at. We're going to take a look at the wine region, the region of Abruzzo in general, and then the wine region itself, the wines, where those wines are coming from. A little bit of discussion about the consortium and what they do, and then looking at production, the various aspects that make the wines what they are. So the soils, the climate, winemaking, and then look at those individual denominations and some of the varieties and the vineyards and what makes these wines really special. So here we are. Let's take a look at the wine region of Abruzzo. And here we are within the country of Italy, of course. And here's our little arrow pointing us to Abruzzo. And what do we need to know about Abruzzo? Well, we're going to look quite a bit at the topography here, but just kind of for general reference, it's located in the sort of, we would consider the east central part of Italy and faces the Adriatic Sea. So what makes Abruzzo so well suited to viticulture? Okay, we're going to look at the climatic factors that really make Abruzzo special. We're going to look at some of those really topographical features that make Abruzzo unique. And of course, we're going to look at those indigenous grape varieties that really make those wines of Abruzzo stand apart from other regions. And we're going to talk about this leap forward in terms of the qualitative growth. So a lot of us probably have an idea of Abruzzo in our mind about what the wines are, but I think there has been a big change in the last generation in terms of the focus of the winemaking and the quality of the wines that are coming out of Abruzzo. So here we are with a little bit more of a zoomed in look of the region itself. And you'll notice on this little map here that there are a lot of mountain icons and a lot of hill icons. And that is really important. And it is a big factor about what makes Abruzzo so special. So you can essentially divide the topography of Abruzzo into sort of 3 bands. And if I get my little pointer out here, this sort of strip right in here, okay, very narrow kind of coastline that runs about 80 miles, 130 kilometers. Here you have a lot of sandy beaches, especially in this northern half, beautiful beaches up here. Lots of dense Mediterranean scrub down here in the southern half. And then you can see that there's can't see it on this map. When we get to another map, you'll see that there are some sort of rivers that are running sort of perpendicular here into the sea. We're really focused on this middle sort of band in here, where we have the strip of gentle hills, sort of medium elevation hills, and that kind of beautiful location for vineyards. When you get up into here, into this third band, okay, we have this large mountainous inland area. And in fact, almost 2/3 of the territory is covered by mountains. So it is, Abruzzo is the most mountainous region in central and southern Italy. Here we have interspersed sort of within these mountain ranges, these high elevation plateaus, some sort of amphitheater-like mountain basins. The mountains themselves are quite steep and they sort of loom sort of abruptly over the landscape, and a lot of grazing of animals in this area as well. You can see Marche to the north there, and sort of Lazio to the southwest, and then Molise to the south. And there's our Adriatic Sea. Give us an idea of this beautiful landscape of Abruzzo. Clearly that you have this huge diversity within what is a relatively small area, right? So you have a coastline and beautiful seafood and, an industry based around the sea. And then inland, you have these beautiful mountains. And here you can see that they're saying it's situated, the region itself sort of situated between that Adriatic Sea and the Gran Sasso and Maello Massifs. So it has 3 national parks and more than 10 national and regional nature reserves. So it is a land that really is preserving its natural environment. And you feel that when you're in the region. There's a lot of green space and this kind of wild, sort of unattached sort of landscape there. If you haven't visited Abruzzo, I really encourage people to do that. It is one of these regions that, it's maybe not first on the sort of top 5 of the tourist places to visit in everybody's mind in Italy, but just kind of, going off that sort of beaten track a little bit, and you will be amazed at the beauty and the people, the warmth of the people. And I certainly encourage anybody who's looking for something a little bit different than the big cities and all the sort of, common tourist attractions to give Abruzzo a try. So here are some of the things that they really want you to sort of be kind of front of mind when you think about Abruzzo and the wines and what gives this place its special character. So as we mentioned, those mountains, you have the highest peak in the Apennines there located in Abruzzo, the Gran Sasso. Then that nature that I was just speaking about. So more than 30% is protected. And that's a huge something that the Abruzzesi are very proud of. And then, of course, the Adriatic Sea with this coastal area that leads into these hills that are ideally suited to viticulture. So it's this blend of nature and mountains and sea. Beautiful picture of the Central Apennines there. And of course, you can imagine that plays significantly into climate. Okay, so a little bit milder on the side of the Apennines that are facing the Adriatic Sea. That would make sense, right? You're going to have some more of that climatic influence coming in off of the sea. As you move inland, you get more continental influence. It seems to be wherever you are within Abruzzo, you will have this large diurnal shift. So remember, diurnal shift is that temperature difference between sort of the highs during the day and the lows during night. And many people really feel that this is a key factor when it comes to producing high quality wines. And why is that? Well, you want that warm temperature during the day, so that the vines are functioning well, they are undergoing photosynthesis, and they are converting energy, sunlight into sugars. So the vines are ripening. And then in the evening and at nighttime, the temperature falls and the vines kind of shut down that process. They rest a little bit, they preserve their acidity, and then the process starts again the next day. And that is really thought to lead to complexity in wines and helping to preserve a really good balance of fermentable sugars and acidity. And then, of course, good ventilation. And why is good ventilation important? Well, when you have some nice breezes occurring, then you have less issues with fungus and molds and that kind of thing. And so you have less need to be sort of spraying in the vineyards and that kind of thing, because you have this good ventilation that is keeping the vines and the grape bunches healthy. Here we have some more pictures that they have supplied, and I think you can really see from this the kind of diversity of this territory, all the way from those beautiful beaches. Honestly, these beaches are some of the most beautiful in Italy, and they tend to be a lot less crowded than the ones that we are used to seeing on the postcards and on Instagram and that sort of thing. So if you are a lover of the beach, definitely a place to check out. And then I think this middle picture just really shows just how wild and untouched a lot of the landscape is. And then, as I was mentioning before, so here we have the trabucchi or trabocchi, which are these, the translation is really fishing machine. So it is this structure that is constructed on these stilts out over the sea, and fishermen would actually fish off of there, prepare fish on there, and you can see these dotted along the coastline, and some of them have been actually kind of converted into restaurants, and beautiful place to enjoy absolutely fresh seafood in a stunning setting. Sort of milder climate. They tend to have sufficient rainfall in most of the area, so that's an important consideration, especially in these days of sort of climate change, where in a lot of Italy, lack of rainfall is really becoming a critical point in viticulture. Tend to have a lot of sunlight. It tends to be quite bright there, not a lot of cloud cover, especially in that sort of middle and sort of coastal hill area. And then those diurnal shifts and that ventilation again. So let's look a little bit about the history of this region. Okay. This is a picture of the Valle Paligna. And that comes from the Greek, okay, this word paline, which means muddy, and muddy, slimy. I think muddy is a nicer adjective, but in where that name comes from is that in prehistoric times, the area was actually occupied by this vast lake. And that happened as a result of earthquakes and floods, and it had this rock barrier that was blocking sort of the passage of water to the sea. And so you ended up with this giant inland sort of lake. Okay. In there, you had this very sort of muddy accumulation of soils and sediment. And so it is a very sedimentary soil in most of those sort of coastal hilly areas. Okay, so of marine origin as well. Usually fairly high in clay in some areas, but as you get closer to the coast, you have more incidence of sand in there, okay? That kind of middle band of hills, more marl, sandstone soils with quite significant clay, which again helps in that retention of water. And in terms of winemaking, so we can look back here, the first proof of winemaking dating back to these ancient texts, okay? And then you have the spread of winemaking across the region. And now we're looking at about 35 or 34,000 hectares of vineyards and producing 3.5 million hectoliters of wine a year. Okay. And of that, they're very proud to say that almost 80% is Montepulciano d'Abruzzo. Okay. So of that 3.5 million, you can see more than 1 million of those hectoliters are what we would call DOC or DOCG, so controlled designation of origin wines, and of that, almost 80% are Montepulciano d'Abruzzo. So you can see just how important Montepulciano d'Abruzzo is to the region. A little bit more about the history. Until the Renaissance, you had viticulture really concentrated in the Paligna Valley, okay, in the province of L'Aquila. After that, we see viticulture kind of having this period of rapid transformation during the period of unification. Okay, so when Italy became Italy in the mid 1800s, then you have this rapid phase of transformation of the industry. Now you can see in the last sort of 40 to 50 years, we see the winemakers and the viticulturalists sort of abandoning some of the areas that are less suited to vines and really focusing on those hilly coastal strips of land. And why is that? Well, during that period of rapid transformation, you see just sort of viticulture spreading and maybe not always in the land that is best suited to producing very high quality wines. Now we see this kind of focus on trying to produce higher quality wines. And so that means looking for those vineyard areas that are best suited to producing high quality wines. So what about the wines themselves? Let's talk a little bit about the consorzio. So what is the consorzio? So we're talking about a nonprofit association. So their aim is not to raise money for any business or that sort of thing. What they're doing is any of the fees that the producers pay into the organization are then used to help protect the wines from that area, to promote them in events such as this, and to administer the appellation's interests. Okay, so when we think of the consorzio, really, they're very concerned with those protected designations, okay? And they want to make sure that people aren't using the name Abruzzo inappropriately on wines, aren't promoting wines as wines that come from Abruzzo, that don't, that the wines that are made within the region, within those appellations, are following all the rules and regulations that have been set forth in the various disciplinari that each region or appellation is governed by. You can see that part of their role is ensuring compliance. Okay, so making sure that producers are following along with those rules that I mentioned. And then also the protection of fraud, right, against fraud, and then to promote. So to promote the region itself, to promote the wines, and to try and grow the reach of Abruzzo wines in the export market particularly. As I mentioned before, one of the key points is these national parks and regional parks that really protect a lot of the territory, so 30% plus. Want to point out that that is one of the reasons that they chose the symbol of the eagle, because they really feel that it is an animal that gives this kind of strong protective instinct and tenacious like the people of Abruzzo. And while these national parks and these nature reserves, yes, they're beautiful. but how does it impact winemaking, right? How does it impact the wines that you see in your glass? I think more and more we're realizing that some of the healthiest vineyards are the ones that have more of that sort of polyculture to them, that are not completely devoid of other types of vegetation, that are not devoid of other organisms. And so when you think about healthy wine regions, often it is the ones that have that more diversity to them. And Abruzzo definitely has that. They have tons of natural diversity, and it is something that producers are embracing and learning to promote.
And now, a word from our sponsor. Dracaena Wines loves to give back. There are so many fur babies that deserve to find their forever home. We would love to be able to help as many as possible. If you are part of a nonprofit organization or know of a nonprofit organization that would like to hold a fundraiser, please contact us at contact@dracaenawines.com or visit our website, dracaenawines.com, to fill out the form. How does the fundraiser work? It is super simple and costs your group absolutely nothing. Together, we will choose a month that your group will be sponsored. During the month, you promote the fundraiser just like any other event you'd hold. At the end of the month, we will donate 20% of the sales to your organization. The donations will be made in the name of each individual who purchased the wine so that you know exactly who helped the animals. Our goal is to raise as much funds as we possibly can and to help as many animals as possible. So please help us help as many fur babies as we possibly can.
So in terms of winemaking, how much wine are we making here in Abruzzo? We are talking about a significant amount of land covered by the vineyards, about 250 wineries, and making about 140 million bottles of Abruzzo wine, and contributing about 300 million euros to the economy. The yields there, 1.4 tons per hectare or 0.57 tons per hectare. Now, what does that really mean, right? Because it's really hard to know, okay, how does that relate to sort of averages? I guess you could say sort of on average, it's usually about, if we said maybe 4 tons per hectare, okay, it's kind of average. So this seems quite low. And why is that? So there are a lot of factors that can kind of contribute to that. So the health of the vines, how the vines are managed, trellising systems, how the wines are structured, or the vines are structured in the vineyard, all those things can play into that sort of average. Within there, although 4 may be average, you could say that there's quite a common range between 1 and 12 tons per hectare. So why is this seems sort of quite low within that range? And one of those things maybe is something that we can relate back to the training system. So of those 140 million bottles, where are they going? Okay, you can see about 40% staying within Italy, and of the sales in terms of value, okay, about 40% of the value is being sold within the Italian market and about 60% in the foreign market. So you can see that the export markets are very important for wine producers in Abruzzo. Within that, where are the biggest markets? Well, we have Germany, the USA, Canada, and the UK. Okay, so Germany definitely kind of the biggest market there, and then fairly even between the US, Canada, and the UK. People that are joining us from those countries, based on those kind of market shares, I would think that it would be fairly easy to find some of these wines in your various markets. Interested if you want to include in the chat box any thoughts you have about availability of the wines, and as we kind of work through the various styles of wines, even adding if you've encountered one style more than the other, or if some styles aren't available in your market. Interesting for the consortio to know kind of where people are able to find the wines and maybe where they're still encountering difficulties to find the wines. Production, we're going to look a little bit at some of the factors that play a part here. So as we mentioned, those production areas concentrated almost entirely in the hills, and the province of Chieti has more than 83% of the territory planted with vines. And I will show you on another map in a moment, but Chieti is kind of the sort of lower southeast portion of Abruzzo. And then we have Pescara and Teramo with about 10% and 6% each. And that's kind of the Pescara is in the sort of center of the province, so sort of center on the coast, and then Teramo is in the north. And then L'Aquila, less than 1%, and you can imagine why, because that is the area that is almost completely mountainous. So there's not going to be a lot of vineyards in there. So we have about 6,000 grape producers, 35 wine cooperatives, and 250 wineries. So you may be asking, okay, how come so many grape producers, but only 250 wineries? So I think that these three figures sort of relate very well to one another. So you have 35 wine cooperatives, which those cooperatives are going to be buying grapes, buying wine from, just in this case, probably buying grapes from various producers. So here you have almost, an average of about 6,000 grape producers. So it tells you that there's a lot of people that are farming vineyards and are selling their production onto the cooperatives, but are choosing not to make the wines themselves. And then you have about 250 wineries, okay, that are managing production from the vineyard into the winery and out in terms of sales. I think we're going to see that number grow, all right, the number of wineries, because you're seeing a new generation that is kind of coming in and deciding to maybe stop selling the grapes to somebody else and to start focusing on producing the wines themselves and really showcasing their individual terroirs. Okay, so we might see that 250 grow a little bit over the next few years. Okay. Here, yes, I put this little board from Wikipedia here, this little map with the provinces, so that you can kind of see there was that Chieti area that I mentioned before that has about 83% of the territory planted to vines. And then the Pescara, about 10% planted to vines, and then 6% in Teramo, and then L'Aquila with 1%, right? Here you can see in this particular slide a little bit of the breakdown of the soils. It's quite complicated here to kind of, there's a lot of soil types there, but you can see, let's see here. So this kind of gray area, gravel, sand, and clay, okay? And the yellow being clay and sand, all right? And then 3 being this arenaceous and pelitic rock, so that sedimentary kind of rock in here. And as we get down more into the Chieti province here, then more that calcareous marly soil. Okay, so those are kind of the big ones that would focus on. And the black line here is giving you an idea of where the Montepulciano d'Abruzzo and Trebbiano d'Abruzzo wine areas are. So basically this entire portion that is not too mountainous is devoted to those wines. So when we were looking at those yield numbers, one of the things that I mentioned is perhaps some of the training methods could be impacting having those lower yields per hectare. And pergola is definitely one of the factors that comes into play in Abruzzo. It is still the most widespread cultivation technique, okay, and it's known as the Abruzzo pergola. So you can still see over 80% of the regional vineyards are devoted to the pergola. And so here we're talking about a very high training system. that gives you quite big spaces between the vines. Yes, those vines are capable of producing quite large quantities of grape, but there is a significant spacing between the vines. And I'm just going to jump ahead to the next slide here, because here we have more cordon trained vineyards, which are used for most of the new plantings that are happening, or if somebody is replanting a vineyard, often it is converted to, or not converted to, it is planted to more of a cordon train system, which is probably what most of us are familiar with. However, you do see some producers kind of embracing the pergola again in some regions within Abruzzo. And again, we can go back to things like climate change to look for why is that happening. With the pergola, you have a lot of natural shading of the grape bunches, right, from the sun, so it can help prevent sunburn and that sort of thing in the grape bunches. It can also help sort of disperse the resources of the vine a little bit more amongst more grape bunches, which then can kind of slow down the ripening, and you can kind of help control elevated alcohol levels and final alcohol levels in your wine. And so there are things that are positives about the pergola. It's not completely an old-fashioned system that should be abandoned, and that's why there's still a significant amount of pergola being embraced in Abruzzo. So we're going to talk now about a little bit about the appellations within Abruzzo. In the past, there were 4 DOCs, and we had 8 individual IGTs. Okay, so those Indicazione Geografiche Tipica. So those bigger areas that have fewer rules and regulations, a little more sort of flexibility in what the producers are allowed to do. Okay, so now we have one IGT, so this overarching Terre d'Abruzzo IGT, okay? And we have the same 4 DOCs, but now we have these subzones, and these subzones basically correspond to the provinces themselves, okay? Of course, if you want to use the name of the subzone on the label, then the grapes have to be grown within that stated subzone, okay? And you can see one important note here at the bottom. The mention of superiore and reserve can be used only for the 4 provincial subzones, okay? So before, it was a little more flexibility about what could be labeled as superiore or reserve. Now, if you are going to produce a superiore or a reserve wine, it must be from one of those 4 provincial subzones. Okay. Here on the left-hand side, we have regional DOCs with mention of superiore or reserve. So Montepulciano d'Abruzzo, Ceresolo d'Abruzzo, Trebbiano d'Abruzzo, and Abruzzo. There's an extra O in there, d'Abruzzo. And then we have these 4 big provincial subzones. So the Colline Terramane, the Colline Pescaresi, and Terre di Chieti, and Terre Aquilane. Okay, so in here, you can see a bit of a breakdown. So you guys have access to this presentation. So you will have this map, and I encourage you to take a good look at it, because it's a little hard to kind of take it all in at once here. But you can see here now that we have the 2 DOCGs, okay? We used to just have the Colline Terramane, Montepulciano d'Abruzzo, and that used to be the only DOCG. Recently, not too long ago, they have added the Tulum DOCG. Okay, and again, that focuses primarily on Montepulciano, so it'll be labeled as Tulum Rosso. And here you can also actually have varietal wines from Passerina and Pecorino. And then within the DOCs, okay, we have our basic Montepulciano d'Abruzzo, so anything in this green here, okay. And then within there, we have these sottozone or subzones, okay, as we get into the various wines that we're going to talk about, okay. And within the sotozones or the subzones, you will have varying sort of rules and regulations about how much, what is the minimum percentage, because most of them only apply for the red wines or the Reserva wines, and have varying percentages. Does it have to be 85% Montepulciano? Does it have to be 90% or 100%? So that is one of the things that differs among the different subzones, okay? This little Alto Torino, a little tricky to see, but right up in here, okay. Yes, you can see that there are little pockets of vineyards that kind of reach in a little inland here, maybe some of these plateau areas within the mountainous region, but most of the production is in this sort of coastal inland hilly band here. So what about grape varieties? Here you can see one of the red grapes or black grapes, the Montepulciano. We're going to talk quite a bit about Montepulciano in the upcoming slides. But then we also have some very important white grape varieties. So our Trebbiano Abruzzese, okay, so just take note that the appellation itself is called Trebbiano Abruzzo, but the grape variety is Trebbiano Abruzzese. So there is a difference there. And then our Pecorino and Passerina. Passerina may be the one that you're maybe a little less familiar with. It is an ancient grape variety, kind of native to the central Adriatic coast. Probably Marche boasts the largest area under vine for Passerina. The wines themselves can be quite floral, little ripe citrus, some tropical fruit sometimes, naturally high levels of acidity. So often you'll see it being used in sparkling wines or sometimes some pasito, some sweet pasito wines. So one of the kind of neat things about Passerina is maybe its name, which they think maybe is kind of linked to its ability to produce fairly high yields. So one of the synonyms is paga debito, which means like to pay the debts. The uva de oro, the golden grape, not because it turns gold, but because you were able to get some money for it because it produced fairly significant yields. And then we have our Cococciola and Montonico, Malvasia, and Moscatello. Okay, so less, I don't say less important, but less in terms of quantity that you see of these. Maybe the Cococciola is becoming a little more popular. You're seeing it a little bit more, but the other ones are often used kind of as primarily as sort of blending grapes within the other wines.
Even in the Bible, water.
Hey everybody, I want to introduce you to the Wine Tasting Club card. This club entitles members to receive half off wine tasting flights at 100 plus partner wineries, vineyards, and tasting rooms for an entire year. Choose from the VIP e-card plastic wallet that is embossed with your or your gift recipient's name, or you can choose to download a VIP e-card mobile app to your phone. This month's special price is only $29 for a 1-year membership. Take time to order the Wine Tasting Club cards online today and save $5 with promo code WINE5. That's WINE, the number 5. Visit their website, www.winetastingclubcard.com, to order your card today.
Turn right into wine.
This has been another episode of Exploring the Wine Glass. Thanks for listening. If you have suggestions on what topics you would like me to discuss, please reach out on social media. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook as Exploring the Wine Glass. I am also on LinkedIn as Lori Hoyt-Butt. Of course, you can always email me at exploringthewineglass@gmail.com and sign up for my newsletter at exploringthewineglass.com. If you enjoyed what you heard, please rate, review, and subscribe to help others find me more easily. And most importantly, tell your wine-loving friends, because if you like the podcast, they will too. Podcast music is Wine by Kevins. Until next week, slancha.
Right now. I'm on Kevins for my 10,000 tell you. There is always time for a good glass of wine. A nice glass right now.